This is the sound a doggy makes. Mr. Connery.
Moo.
No.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer and engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Cool Shul Jewish Cultural Community, and Atheists United Studios. Hey, Joey. From a certain perspective, everything is trivia. Nothing is important, and yet everything is. One person's core truth is another person's trivia, and one person's trivia is another person's who gives a crap. Well, as it turns out, knowing obscure facts is good for our mental health. Playing trivia games, especially when you get the right answer, provides a dopamine rush, much like gambling, but without the negative effects. Some have accused Jeopardy, the iconic American game show that first aired in 1964, of being a form of gambling. Yet while there's certainly money on the line, it's a quiz show, not a gambling game. And there are provisions in the code of U.S. law assuring that game shows and gambling are two different things. Of course, that doesn't mean Jeopardy isn't a lot more nerve-wracking than a family game of Trivial Pursuit.
We're jazzed to talk with Jennie Bunde, a native of Galesburg, Illinois, who was a contestant on Jeopardy in March of 2022. A lifelong fan of Jeopardy, a show that's been around for generations, Jennie also recently graduated from rabbinical school with a master's thesis exploring how to bridge the generation gaps through listening, dialogue, and perhaps trivia night. Jennie, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
A lot of people try to get on Jeopardy. Most of them are weeded out early in the process. How did you make it through the stages of selection?
So there's quite a few steps. I took the Jeopardy Anytime test. So if you go on to Jeopardy.com, they have a trivia test. And now they have it where you can take it, I think, up to once every 6 months or so. You don't have to put who is or who was, anything like that. But it's just a bunch of trivia questions. You're not told how well you did. And it's kind of like if you progress, you find out. So I took the quiz I think 2 or 3 times. And then the second or third time, I got a call saying, or an email saying, you get to take the test again. So I essentially got to take the test again, but this time proctored online so someone could make sure I wasn't cheating. And still don't know how well you did. And then a while later, I got an email for an audition and got to sort of play mock Jeopardy on a Zoom call. So they sort of had a Jeopardy board. They had us get clicker pens and pretend we were buzzing in, and they interviewed us. And then you still don't know anything, and then they finally gave me a call. So that's kind of the process.
And, you're just bringing up something that's kind of interesting. The fact that if you're doing something online, you could cheat, right? And I wonder how they did it before that. Do you have any sense of the history of these kinds of steps that you have to go through?
Yeah, I only know a little bit. And I think it's very recently they started offering the online test. So before that, you would go to a big city. They would have like an audition day. And so then you would take like a paper test. And if you did well enough on the paper test, you got to do an audition kind of thing.
So Jennie, as we alluded to in our intro, you're, described as a lifelong Jeopardy fan. So just wondering, how long does that really mean? Maybe what's your relationship with trivia writ large?
My family has always watched Jeopardy. When my grandmother, my bubby would come to visit, it was always Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. I can't remember the order, but it was always those two. My parents always taped Jeopardy, always a Trivial Pursuit game somewhere in the house. And then I think I may have picked up the Ken Jennings book on a whim. A friend of mine a few years before that had gotten me onto a podcast called Good Job Brain. It's all about trivia, and I love it. It's like my favorite podcast. And again, I kind of just read this memoir just because I think Ken Jennings is kind of cool, and he seems like a fun sort of person. And then sort of reading his book, it was like, well, maybe I could do that. You know, who knows? It doesn't hurt to take an online test, you know, and then it turned out well.
Well, your background is pretty eclectic. You have a master's degree in biology and a master's degree in rabbinic studies. It must be an advantage to have knowledge in such disparate and some would say competing fields. Was that an advantage going into that anytime test and the other stages?
I think it helps to know a little bit about a lot. So for most things in the internet, my username is Jen of all trades, as like a play on Jack of all trades, master of none. So I love to dabble. I love to learn a little bit about lots of things. I love kind of going down weird rabbit holes. And so that I think helps. There is almost always, it seems like, a Bible category on Jeopardy. So, you know, those are usually my good ones. There's usually an animal category. So there's like one or two categories that really helps, but otherwise just
So basically being curious.
being that person you hate to be with at a party who goes, hey, I heard about, did you know? Like, and then they launch into something completely random that you may or may not care about.
We read a quote from you. I wish I could have done better, so I'm a little disappointed, but it was a really tough game. Sometimes you get lucky with the categories and sometimes you don't. They were just not my categories. Would you care to elaborate a little?
I think there are people who are super winners who go on the show who I think have this amazing knowledge and ability. I kind of knew I was not going to be the next Ken Jennings, but you know, there are questions where sometimes you hear a trivia question, you hear the answer, then you go, right, that was not my episode at all. Like I just, you know, the crickets were chirping. Like I had no clue. There was nothing in the punch bowl, which sucked, you know, because I think it was the episode before there was a whole category of bats. And that's what I did my master's of science in on bats. And like had that one, like, you know, I could do my Latin animal names or, you know, there was no Bible category. There was no animal category, you know, all these things that have gotten, for any of my weird hobbies, like just, it wasn't there. I think one of the coolest things about Jeopardy is it's not competitive. You're really competing against yourself. You know, it's like you want to know all the questions. It's a really loving group of, like, they weren't competitors. Everybody was just so friendly. As soon as the episode was done, it was like, you did so awesome. No, you did so awesome. This was great. The woman that completely wiped the floor with me and the other guy who came in second was extraordinarily fast on the buzzer. I mean, she was amazing on the buzzer. So I'm totally, and she knew her stuff. So I'm totally going to give her credit for that. But I wish I knew more of the answers.
Yeah, it does seem that on most episodes of that show, there's usually one person who does really well, maybe a second person who's somewhere close to that, or two people who do really poorly. And I think you're explaining a lot in the sense that all of these people are on some levels peers. They got to that stage, they were able to succeed through the different rounds of selection. And then you just get questions that are totally not your thing.
And again, it happened to be that a lot of the questions in my episode were not, and it's kind of an art form to figure out the whole buzzer thing. So for people who don't know, there's an LED light strip around the big question board. And the way you answer is the host has to read the entire question and then the lights light up. And you can't buzz in until the lights light up or you get locked out for a certain amount of time. So it's all human controlled. So you have to, again, it's like an art form. You have to figure out exactly when the right moment is, when the host stops talking and you can buzz in and to get it right.
I'm wondering if you could share about the whirlwind process of appearing on the show. I read that 5 regular episodes are taped per day for like 46 days a year. That's pretty wild. It must have been a blur.
They taped 2 days out of the week. So I think I was there on a Tuesday. They taped a Tuesday and a Wednesday. So yeah, they did 5 episodes. It's a pretty long day. I think I got there at like 7. But being from a small town in Galesburg, it felt very Hollywood because there was a wardrobe check and there was hair and makeup and it felt very, very exciting in Hollywood. And because it was COVID, the regular green room was too small for safety reasons. So our green room was the Wheel of Fortune set, which I thought was really cool. Uh, but then they have to talk about Blair. They spend an hour kind of reading all the rules and regulations that they had to go through. I really don't remember much. The only thing I really remember is they sort of said, you can't bet amounts that would end in a number that would essentially make people giggle. So use your imagination. There are certain number combinations that could make people giggle. You weren't allowed to put those into your bids, but they go through a whole rules and regulations and what to do. And then you're kind of chit-chatting with people. I think I was the second or third episode of the day. And then I could have gone home after my episode, but I was in California, and when else am I going to watch Jeopardy being taped? So I stayed for the rest of the day. So I got to watch the other people afterward. And it was cool because even though we were taping in, I think, January, the April 1st episode was being taped. And so they actually pulled this huge April Fool's joke on the contestants. It never aired, but it was really cool to watch it, and you're not thinking about April Fools in the middle of January. So that was pretty cool.
We know that due to COVID restrictions, you weren't able to bring family members to the set. And I know that you're a very devoted wife and mother. What was it like flying out to California without them?
Going out to California in the middle of winter when you live in Illinois is always lovely. But it was wonderful just getting to spend some time, where I got to sort of be my own center of attention. Huge shout out to my friend who hosted me, where I stayed at her place. And not only was she a wonderful host, but like her husband made me special brain food. So I would have extra sharp energy for the show. And I was allowed to tell her what happened after the taping, and I had extra day before I flew home. And the next day she was like, hey, since you're not like a super winner on Jeopardy, you like want to go hang out at Venice Beach for the day? It was fantastic. So I don't know if they would have allowed kids into the taping or not. I mean, I'm sort of sad my family wasn't there. But it's just lovely being out in California.
The way you describe the kind of vibe and the atmosphere, taping the show and watching the show from the audience, sounds like it was kind of a community also, like a family feeling, even though these are strangers. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That's kind of interesting.
So my taping day, there was a person, and they had with them this Ziploc bag with 500 flashcards in it. And they were drilling. And they were like, I didn't get to see their taping because they taped the next day, but like they spent the whole time serious. And I thought, okay, this person is going to be the next Ken Jennings. And they didn't win their episode. On the flip side, if anybody does watch Jeopardy, Matea Roach was one of the more recent kind of super winners. And she was there my taping day. So they sort of have alternates. She wound up kind of being an alternate. She taped the next day. And I thought, well, this is a really, really nice young woman. She is so sweet. She'll probably have her one episode and she'll go home back to Canada and it'll be great. And I never thought, and here she is. She won huge, and she was just in like this Masters tournament and almost won. Like, she's fantastic. So, but everybody loved like, where are you from? With Matea, it was like, why do you know so much American trivia? Because she's Canadian. Like, just lots of like, how many times have you auditioned? How many years? This and that. There's a really cool Facebook group for Jeopardy alumni. They show pictures of like their anniversary. So they'll be like, this is my 18th anniversary. And they'll show their picture of them with, whether it's Alex Trebek or Ken Jennings. They'll post gatherings, they're doing a Jeopardy gathering in this city or that city. They show people making Christmas ornaments with their name on little podiums. I have a t-shirt, So it's a really cool group of people.
Speaking of winning and losing, did your relationship with Jeopardy change after being a contestant on the show? I know that you didn't do as well as you might have. And I'm wondering if maybe it took you a while to sort of get over that and make peace with the show and enjoy it with those kinds of enthusiastic eyes that you had before.
I got back into it pretty quick because the pressure's on, right? So I think I had 3 or 4 weeks before the taping, right? And so in that 3 or 4 weeks before the taping, I'm watching Jeopardy every night, and every question I get wrong, I feel this like, weight in the pit of my stomach of like, oh, I didn't know that question. I didn't know that opera or that, state capitol, whatever. And so once you're done taping, you don't ever get to go back to Jeopardy again. They're kind of fiddling with those rules now, but essentially you never get to go back. If I don't know my Wagner operas anymore, doesn't matter. Like, if I don't know the tallest mountain in Peru, doesn't matter anymore. So the pressure is like off, and then you just get to enjoy it. And then it was just, I was fascinated watching Matea, because she is just, for people that watch Jeopardy, she is absolutely as nice as she looks on stage. She is the exact same person. And it was really cool just kind of watching the people I saw behind the scenes, shine. I only get a little snapshot. So, I only got to see who won the last episode of the day. I don't know what happens after that. So yeah, I think the only bummer was I really wish they would have shown the April Fool's joke.
Do you want to share what that was?
Absolutely. So Mayim Bialik was the host, and they brought up, the 3 contestants, and she sort of welcome everyone and did her welcome, and then said and here are today's categories. Say it in Swahili. You do the calculus. And they just kept getting it was like women's college volleyball coaches. And you just watch their faces, and in the audience, we're all looking at each other going, thank God that wasn't us, and then no matter what you picked, the correct answer was April 1st. And so whatever the first person picked, the correct answer was April 1st. And she went, April Fools. And the poor contestants just about died as realizing that it was an April Fool's joke, because they thought they were going to have to pull some Swahili and calculus out of their brain from somewhere.
Do you have any sense from the kind of other side, the writing side, what goes into writing a question for the show? It sounds like they don't want it to be too difficult that no one will get it. They don't want it to be so easy that anyone can get it. It's sort of in the middle somewhere.
It is very secretive. I think one of the things to look for is they'll usually put a clue within a clue, so I can't even think of one. Sometimes if you watch the show, you'll catch there's a play on words in what they post on the screen. And if you can catch that, it'll sort of lead you to the right answer. But I really wonder, because it's all human. So it's whoever's in the writer's room writing the questions. So if they think trivia is geography and opera and the Bible, they might be skipping Chinese history or Japanese anime or something else. It's whatever they bring to the table is what the trivia questions are.
There is kind of a natural blurring in our culture of what is important, kind of intrinsically, if there's even such a thing, and what is kind of just knowledge for knowledge's sake or whatever.
A lot of contestants come up through the Quiz Bowl world. So I didn't play Quiz Bowl when I was in high school, but a lot of contestants were Quiz Bowl kids when they were in high school. So again, they had this set of what counted as trivia and what doesn't. So it's that kind of evolving idea. There's also this modern day complication of there's a website called the J Archive or the Jeopardy Archive that has every question ever. And the website's set up that you can data mine it. So you can look up stats on how likely it is you're going to get a geography question or a Latin question or an opera question. There are sort of quants who are figuring out, sort of almost secret trivia to know what to brush up on and what to not. And my guess is they're going to start compensating more and more for that as time goes on.
And they might be inadvertently creating more opera fans than there would be otherwise.
That may be true. But I think the thing is about Jeopardy is it's width, not depth. You don't need to read Kafka's Metamorphosis. You just need to know that Kafka wrote a book called Metamorphosis, and it's about a giant bug. You don't need to know anything else, right? And that's a lot of the trivia. You don't need to know, is it the ring cycle for Wagner? You just need to know that exists, So again, it's all about width, not depth, when you're talking sort of Jeopardy level trivia. And I'll even say too, like, my final Jeopardy question was a quote about Lady Macbeth. I had no idea what it was. It just was this quote that sounded like a nasty lady, a mean lady, a terrible person. And Lady Macbeth was the meanest female Shakespearean character I could think of.
That resonates with me very much, too. I think, like, having watched some episodes of Jeopardy, sometimes I feel like I know way too many of the answers, and I think, oh my gosh, I'm doing really well at this. But I am cognizant of the fact that I'm not under the pressure that a contestant would be under. But I will say that I like the width, not depth, because that also sort of vibes with me. I would rather know a little bit about a lot of different things. I don't know very much about any one thing. So all of this to say, do you have any tips, Jennie, for future would-be Jeopardy contestants?
First of all, just watch the show, because you'll get an idea of the kinds of questions and how they ask them and the thought process. The other thing is, when you're watching Jeopardy from your armchair, you can hit the pause button. I'm terrible at their categories like triple rhyme time, where they love, and I will sit there and pause it and, try to figure it out. So I think that's huge. And sometimes you learn a thing or two as well when you watch it. The only reason I even auditioned is I read Ken Jennings' book, Brainiac, which is sort of his memoir of his Jeopardy run and what it was like and his love of trivia. And to me, that was just kind of a great explanation of the process, why he loves trivia. It was a great overview and really and I read it again before I went on the show, and I think it helped. There's one super winner, James Holzhauer. He's one of the big super winners recently. He's really well known for reading kids nonfiction. So again, with that width, not depth, you get the kids' book of like geography or animals or whatever. So he would take, I think, his nieces and nephews to the library, would read up on all the kids' nonfiction, and that gave him enough information to answer most of the questions. One thing I didn't know till now is my synagogue's bima, the pulpit, is about the same height as the podium that you stand on at Jeopardy. So when you wonderful listeners, or you, Jonathan or Joey, are picked to be on Jeopardy, find some sort of bima or podium where you can just practice standing and buzzing in. I think that's huge. And I think maybe one of the biggest things, and this is advice I had heard, is if you make it to the audition, listen to what they say in the audition. So they will tell you, we're going to give you categories. And so if it says 20th century baseball Hall of Famers, please do not say 20th century baseball Hall of Famers. Just say baseball for 800 or Hall of Fame for 800. And please be quick on your answers. And I can tell you in the audition, some people listened and some people went, I don't know. I wonder what category I should pick. Possibly, I think I'll go for that. Yeah, that baseball Hall of Fame for 800. And I'm sure that affected, their audition, right? When they ask you questions, their interview questions. They don't want, I was born in a log cabin, they want a quick, snappy story. I once went parasailing with a duck, and you tell your story and, whatever it might be, and then they go on to the next person. So whatever they tell you, do that.
A tip about the mechanics of the show is probably not what we are thinking about when we're kind of devising our trivia strategies, but the idea of buzzing, like you said, you got to be the quickest buzzer. Even if you know the answer and you don't buzz in fast enough, it doesn't matter, right?
Or even worse, if you know it and you buzz in too fast. Right? So if you buzz in before the lights turn on, because it's Alaska, you get locked out. Before they tape, they give you time at the podium with really softball questions, right? Like, name this current U.S. president kind of softball questions. You're like, oh, I know trivia, But I was so nervous for my filming. I think they told me that I was buzzing in too early.
Well, thank you so much, Jennie, for joining us and teaching us and to our audience. Now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.
Burt Reynolds.
Who is Scooby-Doo?
No.
Yeah. That was a funny dog, Scooby-Doo. He drove around a van and solved mysteries.
That is incorrect.
No, that's correct. I remember, you had a pal, Scrappy-Doo.